In this video, I'm going to show you all 21 Fitbit Inspire 3 clock faces that are available at the time of launch. Alright, this clock face is called Highlight. This is what the always on display version looks like. It's very dim and it just shows the hours and minutes, day of week, and date of month. So we can tap here and see what the normal face looks like. So we get an additional stat here at the bottom. We can have heart rate. If we tap, we can scroll through calories burned, distance, active zone minutes, steps, and we're back to heart rate. You can also customize the color of this watch face. You can have green with a green stat, purple with a light blue stat, or yellow with a red stat. This clock face is called Aura. This is the always on display version of it. It's very dim. It shows the hours and minutes of time, the day of week, and the day of the month. When I tap it to activate it fully, we have this little animation that comes on, and you can see the same stats. I can tap to see active zone minutes, steps, heart rate, and we're back to the date. This clock face is called Liberty. This is the always on version of it. We have the hours and minutes of time with a little PM designation. We also have a 2-letter version of the day of the week and the date of the week. When I wake it up, this is what it looks like. We now have the active zone minutes here on the side, and I can tap to show heart rate, and we're back to active zone minutes. This clock face is called Vogue. This is the always on version. It just shows the hours and minutes of the time. When I wake it up, we now have a little stat below. So this is active zone minutes. We can tap to go through steps, heart rate, and we're back to active zone minutes. This clock face is called California Dream. The always on version is shown here, and we just have a analog hour and minute for time with a very faint background that you probably can barely see. I'll wake it up here, and now we see we have the seconds hand of the analog clock. We have the day of the week and the day of the month. And over here we have a stat for active zone minutes. Tapping, we can also show heart rate, and that's it. This clock face is called Playful. This is the always on display version. I can barely even see that there's hours and minutes of time, and there's also what seems to be heart rate here. So you can have always on heart rate for this one. If I wake it up, we can now see the same thing. There is no interactivity, although it does say that the size of this heart will increase or decrease with your actual heart rate. This face is called Analogish. It's an analog face that also displays the day of the month. So this is the always on display version where you just have the hours and minutes of analog time. If I wake it up, it also shows the day of the month here. And there is no interactivity, although it does show the seconds hand in analog time. This face is called Starlight. For the always on version shown here, you can see the hours and minutes of time along with the month and the day of the month. If I wake it up, we have a little animation here in the background. And if we tap, that middle stat turns into active zone minutes, steps, heart rate, total calories burned, distance, and we're back to the date. This clock face is called Glam. This is the always on version of it where you just see the hours and minutes of time. If I wake it up, you'll now see a stat below here. This is active zone minutes, steps, heart rate, total calories burned, distance, and we're back to active zone minutes. This clock face is called Big Time. The always on display version is shown here. It's very dim. You see the hours and minutes as well as the AM or PM designation. If I wake it up, you'll also see a stat down here. So we have day of the week as well as the day of the month. If I tap, I can also see active zone minutes, steps, heart rate, total calories burned, and we're back to the date. This watch face is called Symphony. This is the always on display version where you see the analog hours and minutes. When it's activated, you can see the seconds hand as well as a switchable stat here. So we have active zone minutes, steps, heart rate, and back to active zone minutes. This clock face is called Split. In the always on display version shown here, we see the hours and minutes of digital time, and we see the date, which includes the month and the day of the month. When we wake it up, we see the color becomes brighter. We can also tap and change the bottom stat to active zone minutes, steps, heart rate, total calories burned, distance, and we're back to the date. This face is called Night Sky. It has an always-on version shown here. It has analog hours and minutes, as well as the month and day of the month. Here we have the seconds hand shown, and the active zone minutes, steps, heart rate, and back to active zone minutes. This clock face is called Intersection. In the always-on display version shown here, you can see the month and day of the month, and possibly some analog version of the time. When we activate the full display, we can now see this analog version of the time a little better. It does have a little seconds hand thing here, and we can scroll through active zone minutes, steps, heart rate, calories burned, distance, and we're back to active zone minutes. This clock face is called Circles. It's an analog clock face, and this is the always-on display version that's very dim. We do have hours and minutes of analog time, along with the day of the week and the day of the month. If I activate it, you can now see the seconds hand, and we can also tap to change this bottom stat to active zone minutes, steps, heart rate, calories burned, distance, and we're back to the date. This clock face is called Ice Cream. This is the always-on display version where we can dimly see the hour and minutes of digital time. We can also see a progress circle of our step count for the day, and we can also see the date in terms of the day of the week and day of the month. If we tap to activate it, it becomes much brighter, but unfortunately there is no other interactivity or customization. This clock face is called Hawaiian Punch. This is the always-on display version where you see some hours and minutes of digital time with different sizes for different numbers. And we also have faintly the month and the day of the month. When I activate it, it becomes much brighter. We also do have a seconds here in digital counting up. And if we tap, we do have a tappable changeable stat here for active zone minutes, steps, heart rate, total calories burned, distance, and back to the date. All right, this clock face is called Irregular. This is the always-on display version, which is very dim. We have the hours and minutes in digital time, and it looks like we can see a switchable stat here. Right now it's showing heart rate. So if I tap to activate, we now see this much brighter. We see the weekday, day of the week, as well as the day of the month. I can tap to show steps, heart rate, and we're back to the date. This clock face is called Simpler. This is the always-on display version. We very faintly see the hours and minutes of digital time. We also see the day of the week and the day of the month. When I activate it, it becomes much brighter. We can also tap to change the middle stat to steps, heart rate, and back to date. This clock face is called Overlap. This is the always-on display version where we see the digital hours and minutes as well as the heart rate. Once we activate it, we now have some color version of the time as well as the day of the week and the day of the month. We can also tap to change the steps, heart rate, and back to the date. All right, and this final clock face is called Magazine C. In the always-on display version shown here, you can see the hours and minutes of digital time. We also have the day of the week, the month, and the day of the month. When I tap to awake, this is what it looks like. We can also tap to change that bottom stat to active zone minutes, steps, heart rate, and we're back to the date. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up down below as it really helps this video and my channel, and consider subscribing if you want to see more Fitbit and other wearable content. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.